Hello my dear friend, welcome to my YouTube channel Visa Lab. My dear friend, in today's video I will talk about why an aircraft starts to turn towards the left when we are about to take off. So what are the forces that are acting on an aircraft that makes it yaw towards the left or make it move towards the left? Now this particularly happens when we are moving, when we starts to roll on the runway after we put in the full throttle. So let's take a look at the forces that are there. Now the first forces that is acting on an aircraft when we put in the full throttle for takeoff is the torque effect. Now if you imagine that you are sitting in the cockpit of the aircraft and you put in the full throttle and the propeller of the aircraft starts rotating at its full speed, that is around 2500 rpm in a Cessna 152 or 172. Now because of this rotation, swift rotation of the propeller, there is a counterclockwise reaction. Remember the Newton's first law of motion: every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So because of this, the left side of the aircraft feels a downward force towards the runway, and because of that the left landing gear of the aircraft pushes a little bit down towards the runway, and which creates more friction for the left tire, the tire for the left landing gear to have at the time of its rotation. So it feels more friction and it feels a resistance to start rotation, and but the tire on the right hand side is not having that much of downward force. So because of this reason there is a yaw effect because of this torque. Now I guess you are able to visualize and make out why this left turning tendency is there. Now the second force that is acting is the P factor, or we can call it as the asymmetric propeller loading. Now what is this asymmetric propeller loading? Is that the downward moving propeller grabs a much bigger bite of the air as compared to the upward moving propeller. Now this particularly happens when the aircraft is in a takeoff position, where or particularly we can say has a higher angle of attack, or in case of tailwheel aircraft. Now in both these cases the angle of the propeller is in such a position that the downward moving propeller is grabbing a bigger bite of aircraft and is producing much more thrust on the right hand side as compared to that on the left hand side. So if you can visualize again, I would ask you to visualize again, is that the propeller is rotating on the clockwise direction. The downward moving propeller grabs a bigger bite of air, it push a bigger portion of air backwards and creates more thrust on the right hand side as compared to the propeller that is there on the left hand side. So because of this there is a left turning tendency of the aircraft. Now the third factor that, or the third force that caused an aircraft to move towards the left is the gyroscopic effect. Now what is this gyroscopic effect? There is a gyroscopic, well, the rotating propeller in itself is acting like a gyroscope, which is a spinning disc. Now this gyroscope has two properties. One is the precision, and second is the stability in space. Now what is precision in here is that the force that when applied to a rotating body, so suppose a disc is rotating at a very high speed and a force is applied to at one point of that disc, now that force will act on 90 degrees ahead okay, in the direction of the rotation of the disc. So say for example, if the disc is rotating in the clockwise direction, so and a force is applied on the top side, so the force will be felt 90 degrees towards the right. So here in this case of the rotating propeller, particularly for tail wheel airplanes, when the tail wheel of the aircraft rises, when it is rolling on the runway for takeoff, there is a force applied on the top portion of the propeller, and because of that force is felt 90 degrees towards the right. So the forward moving force on that propeller is felt on 90 degrees towards the right, and so there is more forward motion towards the right hand side as compared to the left hand side. Another force which makes an aircraft turn towards the left. Now, the last but not the least, another important force that makes an aircraft turn towards the left is the spiraling slipstream. Now, what this spiraling slipstream is that it particularly happens when the aircraft is moving slow, and the propeller of the aircraft is moving at a very high speed. Now, the situation of a takeoff is the perfect setting for this two conditions. Okay, the aircraft is moving at a slow speed comparatively, and the propeller is moving at its max speed. Okay, almost at its max speed. So what happens is that a corkscrew type of whirling wind circulates or wraps around the fuselage of the aircraft, and it moves in motion so that it hits on the left hand side of the tail, or the vertical stabilizer. Okay, because since it is hitting on the left hand side, so suppose that this is the aircraft, and it hits the tail on the left hand side. Because of this, it turns towards the left. Okay, the tail is hit on the left hand side, the nose also turns towards the left. So these are the forces. Now, how much of this spiraling slipstream is there? Now, this spiraling slipstream depends, the amount of force that is produced by this spiraling slipstream depends upon the make and model of the aircraft, what and on the what conditions that aircraft is flying. Now, all these four forces, they contribute in the aircraft to move towards the left. So what is the way out here? The only way out here is to put in the right rudder. Now, how much right rudder is required? It depends upon the amount of whatever it takes to keep the aircraft center lined and prevent it from moving towards the left, whatever force that is required. So all these forces act together, and we have to put in the right rudder to counter all these forces. So my dear friend, this is all in this video, and in case you still have any confusion, you can contact me in the email that is provided in the description. I will try to answer your queries as best as possible. This is my first video, and I have tried to explain this yaw left turning tendency of the aircraft in the best possible manner. In case you have a better way to explain it, I would really welcome that. So a quick revision of the four forces that are acting on an aircraft that makes it turns towards the left is: first is the torque effect. Because a propeller moving in the counter clockwise direction creates a left turning force. Then comes the P factor, that's asymmetric propeller loading. Then third comes the gyroscopic effect. Obviously, the point at which the force is applied, it is felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of the rotation of that object or the spinning disc. And then the last but not the least is the uh, propeller slipstream, or the rotating slipstream that attacks on the right from the left hand side of the vertical stabilizer, and it makes the airplane to turn towards the left. So apply a right rudder as much as possible, to as much as is required to counter that effect and keep the airplane center aligned. So I will meet you with another informative videos, and if you like my effort, please don't forget to like my video and subscribe my channel. And until then, stay safe. Happy landings.